be formless, shapeless, like water. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now, water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Okay, I'll be the first to admit, this video was originally going to be on Jade, the new Warframe, but she is currently so good that I can't really think of any way to make any sort of build or video super inspiring or unique about her, just because everyone is going with the same playstyle, including me, and I haven't come up with anything actually worth sharing yet, and I want these videos to be somewhat interesting and usually covering stuff that I think you guys would enjoy. And if the video idea isn't working, then I just know the quality of the content isn't going to be good. But since the latest update, a frame I would like to cover is Yareli. Now before yesterday, Yareli was probably one of my least favourite Warframes, and I wasn't planning on covering her for a while. And this didn't even have anything to do with her kit, this is actually just to do with my own nonsense and the fact that I struggle to really enjoy or play Warframes that I don't like the look of. She didn't have many cosmetics, but obviously with this update she got a new deluxe skin, and I'm just really loving the fashion right now, so I had to pull her out. And luckily this update has helped her massively. I'm sure you guys are seeing a bunch of builds right now orientated around blast damage. One of the best damage types right now, and it's really good with grouping abilities. And as you can see by the intro, Yareli has some insane synergy with this. This of course also works really well with a Warframe like Zephyr, who I was going to cover, but I feel like tackling Yareli first because she's even more underplayed. So let's quickly cover Yareli's abilities and also blast damage. Blast damage is now kind of like you're planting a bomb on the enemy. Damage it does scales off of the damage that you just did, and the more stacks you apply, the more damage it will do per stack. And once you do the maximum amount of damage with the explosion upon 10 stacks, it will instantly reset back to 1 stack. It's basically chaining explosion damage, and it scales really well even without armor strip. As for Yareli's abilities, her passive is increased crit chance for her pistols when she is moving. Her first ability is a CC. She'll send out bubbles and enemies will be pulled up into the air, and those enemies will have a massive damage debuff applied to them. Her 2 is the goofy ass skateboard, behaves the same way that Nezha's ring does. Has its own HP bar, which of course acts as its sort of duration and protection, but its effect on the Warframe itself is damage reduction up to 90%. And of course it's a K-drive, so you can ride it around everywhere and be very mobile, but it is a bit tricky to use on closed tight spaces because you'll get stuck a lot and bump into things. And you are limited to using just your secondary weapon whilst you are on it. Her 3 is basically a duration based close range AoE of slash damage blades. This ability is better used with its augment, but it still provides itself to be a really solid close range CC that stuns enemies. And then her 4 is a single grouping tool, and when you shoot into the group of enemies in the Whirlpool, it will spread the damage across all of them. Just think of this as like one really big Zephyr tornado that you can cast and then manually blow up and then recast. It's pretty damn strong. So now that you know the basics, let's quickly talk about why Blast is so good on Yareli. Obviously, as you can tell by the gameplay in the background, we're combining Blast with the grouping mechanics of her 4. The closer the enemies are together, the more effective blast damage seems to be, and with the way the damage spreads inside the Whirlpool, combining a really strong secondary with something like Blast and Corrosive creates an insane amount of armor strip and explosions going off with inside the Whirlpool all at the same time, and you're also benefiting from the massive damage debuff from your first ability, which mind you is an extremely underrated skill, and of course the crit chance from your passive. For a build like this, obviously you're going to want a really solid secondary that you're comfortable with. For me, I chose the Latum. It's an absolutely monstrous incarnate weapon, and it's not really too hard to get, so I think it would be kind of nice to recommend this one over something like a Dual Toxicist, which may be considered a little bit more tricky. But overall, I'd reckon something that you feel comfortable you can run both Corrosive and Blast on, and something that has a large amount of DPS, so isn't really slow firing. This is of course a disadvantage with Yareli, that she is limited to using just her secondary weapon, unless of course you are using the augment for her second, which allows her to dismount the K-Drive and still gain all of the benefits. Most of you are probably like, why the hell is he using the K-Drive, especially in something outside of an open world? Well, I'm going to be honest, after trying it, I actually kind of like it. Sure, I've fallen off the map quite a few times, and it is really annoying driving this in corridors and just bumping into everything. However, there is another augment for this skill that I really enjoy, and you can't use both of these augments at the same time unfortunately, and that is Yareli Guardian. This is a mod that allows your first sea snares to heal your Yareli's HP and keep it up for longer, and when you proc this heal, it will give you a massive 200% fire rate bonus on your secondary weapon. I would like to revisit Yareli and some of our other augments in the future to do a bit more of a deep dive on some other builds as opposed to cramming them all in this video, but so far the one I enjoy the most is this augment. With this huge fire rate buff, your secondary is going to absolutely tear through enemies, riding around on the K-Drive in order to retain that damage reduction, keeping your 3 active in order to get close to enemies and apply slash, spamming your 1 everywhere for massive amounts of damage. Seriously, sea snares is one of the most slept on skills in the game. I don't think I've used a damage vulnerability, a skill that is as strong as this, and I've done a lot of testing with both Caliban and Nezha, and both of their debuffs haven't really come close to how strong this one is. And then of course you're combining it with the 4, which is great for grouping and thus spreading the damage across multiple enemies. It's a really simple synergy, but one I think a lot of you guys are going to enjoy. That's what I'm absolutely loving about this update so far. Whenever they do massive overhauls like this to big mechanics in the game, it presents a lot of different avenues you can go and try new builds, and Yareli is one of the frames that's really benefited off of this. As for the playstyle, it's very simple. I'm keeping my 2 and my 3 active at all times, and then just spamming my 1 and my 4. Shooting into the bubble constantly with my secondary, and recasting when needed. Nice mechanic to know about is that her second ability has a massive amount of iframes. When the K-Drive breaks, you'll have a short window of invulnerability, and when you recast the K-Drive, you will have a 4-second window of iframes. Combine this with something like Rolling Guard and you are extremely difficult to kill, and if you want to go to level cap, that's definitely the mod I'd recommend. However, for the build that you're seeing in the background, I'm using Adaptation to stack with the damage reduction of 90% from the second, using a little bit of shield gating with an Augur mod, and I'm basically impossible to kill for majority of the levels I'm fighting. Seriously, Yareli's survivability is really slept on. And you're probably wondering, why didn't I remove the third from this build? Considering that I'm new to this Warframe, I didn't feel comfortable getting rid of it yet, and I want to leave avenues open for more builds to do in the future, but right now just working on the base kit and seeing how well it works together, and how strong she is at base, I think would make for a good video. So yes, you will see me revisit Yareli in the future with some Helminth. We may replace the 4 or the 3, but yeah, we'll see. And now onto the builds. In Yareli's aura, I was using Growing Power, but this can be interchanged with Brief Respite, Prime Job Footed so we can actually play the game, Blind Rage and Umbral Intensify for strength, Prime Continuity for a duration, Adaptation to stack with the damage reduction from your 2, thus making you pretty much unkillable, Streamline, Equilibrium and Prime Flow for our energy economy. Streamline is of course there to help with the negative efficiency from Blind Rage, and we do have Energize on here. You could remove Energize and it won't be 100% necessary, but if you really want to go ham with spamming your abilities, I would recommend it. Yareli Guardian for our Augment fire rate buff, and then we're going to add even more fire rate with Arcane Velocity. This will give 120 plus fire rate on our crits. The reason I am using this is because of the Leighton build. On the Leighton we are running Corrosive and Blast, and we're doing this with 4 60% status elemental mods, Creeping Bullseye and Prime Target Cracker for our crit chance and crit damage. This is pretty personal preference. I am aware that this is a good weapon when you run a negative crit Riven on it, but we are using Yareli here, who of course grants us bonus crit when we are moving, Galvanized Diffusion and Galvanized Shot for obvious reasons. And of course, because we are running 4 elemental mods here, we are sacrificing both Lethal Torrent, which is usually a staple in builds like these, and any sort of bonus fire rate build, and that's why I'm using Arcane Velocity as my arcane. From my experience, Corrosive and Blast is way more effective than just Blast on its own, especially when you're fighting enemies such as Corrupted. In the Corrupted run you're seeing in the background, I was running both Corrosive and Blast, but in the Murmur run, I was running just Blast. And of course this weapon has innate radiation. Secondary Merciless as our arcane, and then Steady Hands to help with some of that recoil. Other things to note, I was using a Prisma Shade. I figured I'd do a little switch up in my companion usage for this one, as I haven't used the Shade in a long time. Just use the Prisma or the Prime. and it's pretty nice on Yareli. Every time you're inactive or reviving a teammate or something, you can just go invisible. And then I was running Madurai for my focus school, but honestly I barely casted this because I was just doing so much on the fly anyway. And for real, I think my Sentinel and focus choices being so sort of random here goes to show just how versatile Yareli is. Her base kit is really strong even with just this secondary weapon and the build I've shown you. You can use whatever the hell you want for a melee and a primary. Anywho, that about does it for my coverage on Yareli in this video. This was an amazing surprise. It may seem really cheesy that I just was not accepting the fact that Yareli had a really fun kit purely because I think she looks like a jellyfish had sex with a fucking elbow. But I'm sure plenty of Warframe players can relate to the fact that fashion frame really does matter to how much fun you're having. And now all of a sudden she's one of my favourite looking frames, so of course I'm going to enjoy playing her. The kit is excellent, it's very active. She might not be the best Warframe in the game, but she's come a long way since her release, and she is more than viable to play right now. I'm excited to continue the series on the channel of covering frames like this, and especially with this status update. I mean, holy shit. Whenever they do a big overhaul like this, the amount of frames that get changed just by proxy, I've been having so much fun. The Frost and Ember changes are excellent. Lavos is another one I really want to take a look at. I mean, the possibilities are really endless with this update, and I'm just really enjoying it. Anyway, that'll do it for today's video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed. Also, be sure to follow my Twitch, link is in the description. Over there we play both Apex and Warframe, because of course, I'm still an Apex content creator. Main YouTube channel is also linked in the description. So if you ever want to watch the best Revenant in Apex, or just some fucking moron goofing around with Warframe builds, that's where I'll be. Appreciate the support as always, and I'll chat to you guys soon. Take care.